Welcome to the Roadshow Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 60 of the Roadshow Podcast. I have a special guest with me today, and this one was about 52 episodes ago. We tried this one out, and it worked perfectly. It was the first podcast that I did that it was centered around philosophy. So the man himself, Mr. Philosophy, with the candles to match, Malik Tillman. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great. Lovely to be here.
What's been happening? It's been like a year since I've seen you.
Too much.
Too much?
It's been in a big year.
Yeah?
Yeah. Lots of things with candles and philosophy. And yeah, I feel like, I don't know, last year really kind of honed in on who I am a bit. And yeah, so a lot.
Yeah.
As with you, I've seen a lot.
Yeah, it's all changed, man. It's all changed. Consistently moving, and I guess the terrain always seems to change the more that you go into something.
Yeah.
And obviously with the podcast and music and virtuing differently into different things as well, which is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to get a tattoo of this tarot card, and it's the Fool. And the Fool symbolizes going into unknown territory.
Right.
If you look at the card, he's kind of wandering off of a cliff. And the tarot set resembles the journey through life. And one thing I constantly noted was, as you just said, as you go into these new terrains, or as you walk into new terrains, when you start, you're ignorant and airy-fairy. And as you get into it, it can be downhill from there, but it's just a journey. And I like that feeling when you go into something that you haven't done before, and hopes are high in the beginning, and then just it's a journey, and then you just triumph.
That's embracing the suck. Right. A lot of people don't want to do the new thing because they're afraid to suck at something.
Yep.
And I understand that. Obviously, like before I ever rode a bicycle, it was so scary to find out how to ride a bicycle, or even tying your shoelaces, because you just don't know what that is. And until you actually pursue and put yourself in the situation of sucking for a while, so you can get a grip of what the task is at hand.
Yeah, there's a quote to do with, I forgot the quote, but the concept is always true. You have to be a fool before you become a master. And like back to the tarot thing, the first card, depending on how you order the cards, is the Fool. The last one is the Wizard, which resembles mastering everything at the end. The Wizard is, in the root of the word, is wise man, wise person. And you have to embrace ignorance to get to the place of mastery. Because think about it, if you start off at the beginning knowing everything, you can't change. In saying that, there's a danger in too much change and embracing too much change. This was my problem for many years, is that if you're too open to change, you're wrong about everything all the time, and you're not standing on a firm enough ground to use the knowledge that you've acquired in the past to propel yourself forward. The opposite of that is, I think the term I've heard is called Luciferian arrogance, which is everything that I know now is all there is to know, and is a really dangerous place. And you see people in the business world go into a business with that mindset, that everything that I know now is the way the world is, and they don't embrace change. Or rather, the business owner that, something worked 5, 10, 15 years ago, but isn't working now due to, the changes, is that, well, I've been a businessman for like 25 years. Why do I need to change what I'm doing?
So why does that come under the fall of Luciferian? Because that's like the devil's name, right?
Yeah. I forgot the answer to that. It was a while ago. I read it in a book. And the idea is that what you know is all there is to know. And there was an association there with the devil in the story of the Bible, where he wasn't open to the idea of accepting humans, because that's what Lucifer had a stance against God's love for humans. But there is a more stronger connection there, but I'm not too certain on what it was.
one of my favorite quotes is, "If there is white space on your calendar, you will find the devil."
What does that mean?
I think it's without a regimented life, without discipline. Because obviously, if you're like on holidays and you're sipping mimosas on a beach, eventually you're gonna find the devil.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's the dream that's being sold, which is so wild. If you can contemplate the structure of how everything is put together in life at the moment, in the society that we live in, the dream is to, be able to retire, go and sit on a beach somewhere and enjoy your life. Enjoy it. Sip that mimosa. Sip that margarita.
Yep.
But after about 3 days of that, you're going to be like, what next?
Yep.
But they don't talk about that. It's all about getting there.
Yep. So
that in itself is finding Lucifer.
Absolutely. But there's two main, I think, drives in life: relax and chase. And I think they map dopamine and serotonin. So serotonin is relax. It's appreciate.
I like
right?
that.
And okay, so would you like to hear one of my, say, philosophical theories?
Let's go.
Okay, so I think that there's two meanings to life. There is just that, to relax and to chase. And if you look at religion, which is what I did for a number of years, the main messages of particular kinds of religion normally fall into one of those two categories. With Buddhism, it's to appreciate. Depending on the aspect that you look at the religion, say with Christianity, it's becoming the best that you can be, but also to appreciate. I think that, and if you notice that the two fears that people talk about is the one that you just laid out, is that if you do not move, you die. Like a shark. Like you can't stay in one position. If you do not move, you die. But the other one is, what if you move and you're just moving in an area that is completely futile, and this whole time you get to the end of your life, you were chasing, and you didn't see what was right in front of you. You should have relaxed and occupied the present moment, and just been in life. But you didn't. You went about chasing something in the world, becoming something more than yourself, and then you just wasted your life. That's the fear. Those are the two fears: wasting your life and wasting your life by doing nothing. And these two little voices, almost like the devil and angel on your shoulder, will always whisper those two things to you at various points in your life. It's like, think about when you've been really grinding for 2 weeks straight. You've just been working, and then you're just like, what are you doing with your life? Like you don't even enjoy your life. And it's a really tough feeling. But the opposite of that is like, well, you've been doing nothing for 2 weeks. What are you doing with your life? And my theory is that comes from the nervous system. So the nervous system is one of the oldest parts of not just humans, but living creatures. Yeah. And there's the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system is anxiety, it's stress. And that's what chasing is. It's do not be comfortable with your present circumstances because there are threats lingering. Move out of your present circumstances into better circumstances, and then you'll be on top of potential threats. That's what the sympathetic nervous system is. When the sympathetic nervous system is activated, you exhibit symptoms of anxiety. Now, if you look at the symptoms of anxiety, increased heart rate, dilated pupils, heavier breathing, you know all of them. Those are, what do you call them? Manifestations, I don't know the word, are there to make you survive. Your pupils dilate to let more light in so you can see potential threats. You breathe heavier so that more blood flow.
It's like a fight or flight response.
Exactly. Yeah. That is the response of the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. Mm-hmm. And the reason why that is to maximize your survival, get out of your present circumstances. The parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite. It's to relax, it's to chill. There's another term for it. It's feed and breed, which is what happens normally when this parasympathetic is activated. Is reproduction and eating and relaxing and occupying the moment. And Now, if you look at self-improvement on the internet, normally a lot of these people will pick one of the two, that you should always go after it, go after it. This is a hyperactivation of, I won't say the sympathetic nervous system, but I will say it's a hyperactivation of the energy of anxiety. And if you have too much of that, you just become neurotic.
Would you agree that a small amount isn't necessary, almost like a stress level tolerance?
What would you say? So what was that?
So like if you've got like a little bit of stress, right, and you can tolerate that, because this world is so hyper condensed with so much activity that our brains and information that our brains are trying to process. The base level of stress is actually higher than when it would be if we were in, the forest foraging for shrubs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that you need both, and that is not the message that I don't think is being put out there. Okay. You need both. I won't say activated for long periods of time. I think they should have separation. There should be a period where you are relaxing, a period where you are chasing, and do not mix the two. That's what I think.
So the fat slob that's sitting on the couch watching Netflix and vaping at the same time.
An overdose of the serotonin-based way of living, or
well, that's the complication, right? That right now in this point in time, we have an overlap where chasing and serotonin are the same thing or the relaxation, right? The chase and the relax are the same thing because Tinder. You have all these apps that promote chasing the girl, and then you get the dopamine hit of getting a match with a hot girl. Hey, she's a 6, but I can only get 4s, whatever the fuck it is. You get that dopamine hit.
Yeah.
But you can't relax now because...
Yes.
Yeah.
You've touched on one thing that is what I think is a big problem with the modern world, and it's a dopamine release without any effort put behind it. So this is the issue with the modern world, if you will, is that it's not that we're getting things, it's that we're getting things outside of the conditions under which we normally would had to get them when we lived in the wild. Ooh. And so, for example...
That's really cool.
Food, right? Food is sugar. Let's take sugar, right? Sugar was, depending on where you lived in the world, rare. And your body was not meant to handle the dosages of which it was given. But now you can literally sit at home all day and then get sugar. Like, your body is like, this would never have really happened that much. So, like with social media, we're getting all of these dopamine hits. Video games is another one. I like video games as an idea, but think about you're conquering, achieving, getting to the next level. You're activating all of these like periods of serotonin and dopamine, but your body is stationary.
Yeah.
You're not actually doing it.
It's a mental progression, but it's not even real because it's an exterior manifestation provided to you rather than you providing a change within yourself that brings it to existence.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
And the problem with the modern world is that we've found a way to, almost like pressing a button, release all of these positive emotions without actually putting in the work to do it. And there is a cost to that. It isn't free. That those positive emotions that we're synthesizing aren't free. And like now we have like headsets and everything. People are going to start, dating ChatGPT women, AI generated, like, you know what I mean? It's not that far off. And the issue with the modern world is that we've gotten too good at getting what we want. I think we need to place limitations on ourselves that limit the good things so the good things feel good again. And think about going to the gym. We've created a world in which we can get fat. It's amazing.
Easily.
Yeah, in terms of, if you look at all of human history, it is a miracle that could even happen. The idea of a gym, if you think about it, is a very weird concept, that we have to voluntarily put our bodies under stress for no reason. There are reasons, but as far as our body's concerned, we're not actually, when we lift the things, we're not lifting anything for any value other than to lift it itself for our body's sake. So we have to impose these limitations. We have to impose this negative stuff on our body, negative in the sense that it's painful to go to the gym, in order to operate functionally. This involves social. This is why in a certain way I'm against social media. Dopamine and so on are to a degree limited, right? If you use it up in the day, you can't really get it back. You got to wait till the next day.
Just to cut you off a little bit, because we're bouncing around from so many different things.
Yep.
On that gym thing, do you think it's because we are innate primal, and because we've now pacified the world, we've put like, you know, the bubble wrap around the edges of the table so nobody really gets injured. We have put ourselves in a situation where everything comes from, like you said, at the hit of a button. But one thing that you can't get at the hit of a button is health. So now we've had to put ourselves into these almost like these rooms filled with fake device. Well, they're not fake because they're real. The weight's real. Once you start lifting that fucking thing, it's real. But it doesn't really serve a purpose. If it's on these two little metal beams and the weight's just going up and down, the only purpose is to serve you. So we've created tools to work our body, but in the past, we would work our body to create the tools. And now it's become so simplified because, like you said, we have this over amount, like it's so a surplus to the max of calories. And we kind of need to mitigate that because everything's being provided to us with this web, this stream of, hey, sell this, sell this, sell this, please buy, please buy, please buy. So we are like, oh, and like we were talking about prior to the podcast, the branding in this world has gotten quite good. Like take Liquid Death, for instance, the spring water. We constantly have all these pieces of information where we're like, oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. I like that. And right now, Sorry, that was just my thought. I really wanted to go into that just before we continue on.
Yeah. It's that we've managed as a society to take ourselves out of nature, out of the life of agriculture and, you know, dirt houses and so on. We've taken ourselves out of that environment, but there was some benefit to that environment that we no longer have. So we need to synthesize it. So, for example, living agricultural life had a lot of physical stress in our bodies, but now we're out of that. We still need that. So we synthesize it with the gym, and we do this everywhere. So that's going back to the dopamine, serotonin kind of thing. The point is that we've found ways to feel good that are unnatural, and we need to impose limitations on ourselves so that we are getting a natural source of dopamine and serotonin. So
how? So give people some, like, it's all good and well telling them about how it's fucking us up, but is there certain ways that you found within yourself that you could, like, almost ascertain having like a more balanced serotonin and dopamine?
Yeah. So have you heard of dopamine fasting?
I have. Isn't that like not jerking off and
everything, even eating like really tasty food and so on? It goes pretty.
Here's my argument against that: is even taking a deep breath inspires a little bit of a dopamine release. You know that.
Yep.
Dopamine it's in all characteristics of every single thing that we do, even brushing your teeth.
Yep.
It's all a repetitive, consistent thing. So with dopamine fasting, is that taking out all of the hits that we get that are from artificial kind of responses, or are we trying to cut down all of the dopamine? Because I think we'd all just be vegetabilized.
So. You know how you're saying taking a deep breath, has a bit of dopamine. Doing very simple things has dopamine release. Not when the hour before you did that, you played 7 hours of video games where you've burnt out all of your dopamine for the day. The idea is that when we take away these acute sources of dopamine release that we never would have found in nature, the background of life becomes better. That taking the deep breaths and doing things that are repetitive and normally would be boring feel better because you have more dopamine in your day. You need less to stimulate the same dopamine release. So in a way, dopamine release seems to be like a tolerance gets built up where you need to have more of that thing in order to release the same amount of dopamine. By taking away acute sources of dopamine, whether it be movies and TV shows. Think about a TV show, all of that dopamine release from just sitting down doing nothing. Everything else seems boring in comparison in terms of the rest of your day. So the idea is by taking away unnecessary acute dopamine, breathing feels better. Maybe not like in a drastic sense, but the idea is that the background of life just feels better. And if you think about it, you notice everyone's doing cold showers now. Everyone's doing cold plunges. Everyone's doing saunas. We're putting ourselves in uncomfortable environments that we would have found in nature. And these things boost dopamine. Cold showers boost dopamine. I think it's, from what I heard, up to 2 times your dopamine baseline for the rest of the day if you do a cold shower in the morning.
Yeah, I don't think that's specifically for cold showers because obviously water temperature. Maybe in winter for sure because it's more like ice. You're like, but if you're in like a hot location, good climate, you're having a cold shower in the morning and it's like...
Yeah, that cold water is lukewarm.
It's like 21 degrees. You're like, fuck off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you're saying. It's a 5 times, so 2.5x on your dopamine in an ice bath. And I think the Soberg method is 11 minutes exposure per week. Have you heard of the Soberg? Yeah. And Andrew Huberman and Joe Rogan had a podcast on that recently.
Yeah, recently I saw that,
and fuck me. Like, Joe grilled him, man. It was great. It was good to see, like, even an academic is trying to smarten his way out of just, like, feeling the pain of doing something.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Joe just grilled the fuck out.
They're the smart people that you got to be careful of because they're better at creating rationalizations for not doing something.
Exactly.
Very simple. Not to say Joe Rogan's simple-minded. He's very, complex. But someone like Joe is like, just do it.
Yeah, he's
whereas someone in the books all the time is like, well, you know what I mean?
Yeah. He's a really, really good person to kind of like live your life in I wouldn't say in awe of, but if you were seeking to have a more masculine kind of style at life, he'd be like the guy that you're like, oh, this is the kind of dude that like still has empathy, still has love for others, where if you look at like the polarization of him's probably still in the same masculine framework would be like Andrew Tate.
Yep. See, I think Joe Rogan is a very healthy representation of what a man should be.
Yes.
In a way, he's wise. He listens. He's in terms of the masculinity of which people talk about, which is good. He doesn't get pushed around. He's confident. He's assertive and all of these traits. I think he's a great role model in terms of masculinity. Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely is. But if there's a war happening, are you standing behind him or are you standing behind Andrew Tate?
I'm standing behind Joe Rogan.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I've had that thought a couple of times recently. All of the politicians, and sorry to digress. I know, ladies and gentlemen, I do this shit all the time. But when you're looking at politicians and stuff, these people recruit everyday men, standard Joe Blows, to go and fight in wars that we find out 5 years after they end that there was no point us being there anyway, other than most likely heroin. Right? And then we have these amazing kind of figures that portray this masculine role as like the father figure to the nations that we live in and the society and the social structures that we have, where everyone's chopping their dicks off and wearing dresses. You have people like Rogan, you have people like Tate. I would say Jordan Peterson's in there as well, because these people are like looking at themselves in a way where they can break down the way that they think about these issues that are happening and where they're coming from, and then see, okay, I can come at this from either a place of let's attack the narrative or let's get into the person's personal mindset and see if we can shift it in the right way. And I think Joe Rogan has that curious mindset. He has a very open to interpretation. You know, he's not religious, but he's spiritual. Where Andrew Tate is religious and not so much spiritual.
That's really good. I think that's accurate. what was I going to say? Joe Rogan is a perfect balance of inquisitive but realistic. You notice in that Huberman podcast, Huberman was talking about some ridiculous measure that you do in the gym in order to be more effective. I think it was put your hands in cold water, like before every set.
Pads.
And then even though Joe is like interested in self-improvement, he was like, that's ridiculous, I'm not doing it. He was realistic about what
How do you grab the bar?
Yeah, he was in touch with reality while at the same time willing to entertain
science.
Ideas which he's not used to, and that's probably why I would pick a Joe Rogan war against a Andrew Tate war. No, against an Andrew Tate army, I think, led by Andrew Tate.
Yeah, I think Joe Rogan would be more likely to gas people out with DMT. And everyone just starts hugging. You know what I'm saying? Like, DMT bomb, throw that fucking thing. Where Andrew
he might make the other side too powerful.
Yeah. They just start beaming up.
Yeah, that's it. The DMT aliens come to their side.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, now I'm a part of the real world. And I only joined to see what it was like. And I'm balls deep.
Okay. Tell me.
So the first course, before you kind of figure out how the actual platform works, because they don't detail it too well until the end of the first course, and the first course is like, it's kind of like the hook in a sale, like, or
just before you do that, explain a bit
okay
about what it is. So explain the real world a bit, just for people.
Okay, so the real world is the other side of the matrix. It's the red pill.
Okay. We got to get into the red pill thing.
Okay. Have you read the plays? Oh, I mean, that's a part of it. Rollo Tomasi's Irrational Male.
Oh, I've heard of that book. It's been in the male space for over a decade, I think.
Yeah, so his that theory, the red pill theory, is actually Rollo Tomasi's invention.
Yeah. This is what a lot of people don't know, is that the whole red pill stuff is old. It's way older and deeper than what has been popular in the last 5 years from TikTok.
Yeah, and it's older than The Matrix, the movie.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah.
Have you heard the story about the blue pill, red pill that I have?
Tell me.
Okay, I was at a like an underground German festival, and it was in Perth, and it was like an old burnt out warehouse, and everyone's in like fat pants and like there's like this kind of music going, and I was like, and this guy comes up to me, he's like, "Do you want to break free?" I was like, "Ooh, what do you got?" And he goes, "Choose one," and he opens his hands and he has a blue pill and a red pill, and I was like, "What are they?" And he's like, "They're both acid."
I love that so much.
Damn. Oh fuck. Yeah. So the red pill analogy comes from Rollo Tomasi, and it's basically like the liberation away from. It's pretty much everything that Andrew Tate says is the liberation away from slave mentality, and the slave mentality comes from a sheepish mindset that it kind of feeds off the hive mind, which is like
This is Nietzschean philosophy.
This is exactly. Yeah, it's almost like when you were primal, when we lived in out of caves and in small communities, there was strength to that community. And after time and building the community into societies and cities, there was no longer the hierarchical one guy looks after the whole place. It became teams. It became swaths of teams. And what happens when you get a bunch of smart fuckers in a room together? They start getting divisive. So they start thinking, well, how can we pull all our resources together? What are our resources? The resources only grow once we can give more to our people. But the only way we can give more to our people is be able to control the destination of our people. To be able to sell someone, you have to create a need. How do you give someone a need? You create a deficit. So once the deficit is created, you can now supply for the need, and you have sales. You have well, let's take the whole house market thing, right? Living in houses, that was a very old thing, right? Huts to houses, and now mansions and apartments in cities. And we never really, like, nobody, if you wanted a house back in the primal days, you would get some mud, some rocks, some sticks, but then that banker dude came along. What was his name? The
Tax collector. Normally it was.
No, I can't remember his name. But yeah, it was structures that made it, like, gave the ability, to be able to say, hey, you guys need a home. We own the land for this home because it's now run under government.
Yes.
And
That's where the term landlord came from.
interesting. I didn't put that together.
It was literally a lord, normally. Well, depends where you were in the world, but there was a lord, and you would have to pay your landlord.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so that's the blue pill style living, which is having a need for everything, having every need met, as we were talking before.
Yep.
The red pill is providing the needs, the meeting of the needs to yourself, and breaking away from the sheeple mindset, breaking away from the hive, breaking away from the path that is created for you. So you think you're going to have this island living, drinking mimosas on the beach. That's the dream that's sold to you, but once you get there, you realize that dream's gone. You have to return from the holiday. You have to do all these other fucking things. And I think nowadays, we are so easy to just dismiss that they're actually doing that because everything feels good. The dopamine hits. Everything constantly feels good. And the few that actually break free see it for what it is. And I think with the Rollo Tomasi, the Andrew Tate stuff, the whole red pill thing, sure, it's just an analogy, but it's an analogy to break free, to break into financial freedom, to break into freedom within yourself, within your constraints of what the society expects from you. And look, when it comes down to it, I think any kind of self-empowerment is a positive thing. And some isn't, because once it gets pushed onto other people in a negative way, like cut your dick off because it made me feel good, probably not a good thing.
It depends how you define empowerment. That will determine whether the strive to empowerment is a good thing or not. Because there's a lot of things which, like fool's gold, seem good but are not. Not all that glitters is gold. So you're saying that
All that glitters is gold.
not all that glitters is gold.
Wow.
Honestly, that defines most of philosophy, is determining what is worth empowerment. So this is what everyone is fighting for. Everyone is fighting for this truth of what is the good thing to chase. And you've outlined roughly slave and master morality, which seems to be from Friedrich Nietzsche. You know, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. So in his sense, slave mentality is, if you look at, say, Christianity, a lot of the morals that followed are to diminish the self for the greater good. Or it could be to survive as opposed to impose your will. So, for example, forgiveness. Forgiveness might be seen as a good thing because, you know, you be the bigger person. But someone with master morality would say that, like when the slave was literally a slave, if you fought back after a master did something bad to you, that meant death. So you learn to forgive. Whereas forgiveness isn't really forgiveness, it's just what you have to do to survive. And this is where slave mentality came from, is whatever it takes to survive. And the other virtues which were exhibited by the masters was labeled as bad or evil. So pride, conquering, becoming the best that you can be in all of these things. Honor, these had a shade of negativity to them. And all of the virtues which made you meek, humble, forgiving, these were seen as virtuous. So Nietzsche thought there was a problem with this, that slave mentality diminished the individual, and that in order to overcome this, one must cast aside these moral impositions by society that are placed upon us and find our own sense of meaning, or our own sense of rising to power. Friedrich Nietzsche had a concept called the will to power, in which he believed that acquisition of power, it's debated about what power means, but acquisition of power is the meaning to life in some sense. And that is what everyone in society is doing, is chasing power. It's just everyone's using a different strategy to do so. Think about it like this. You know this meme 5-10 years ago of the male feminist, and people who weren't male feminists accused the male feminists of just trying to do the same thing that as every other slimy male is doing, but they're doing it like they're trying to play the other side in order to do so, which is get women. This is the claim that everyone is trying to acquire power. They're just doing it with a different strategy. You see this in America with like this debate between the trans activists and the conservatives. But yeah, so when you have this red pill and you have the blue pill, to me, I'm just seeing two different mentalities at war with each other. I don't identify with either side. I think they're both wrong. This blue and red pill stuff. What seems to be proposed by the red pill is what's called egoism, which is whatever you want, you go after. Like, think about you, don't think about the broader whole. And there's problems with that. So, and like most religions, you get different offshoots of it. So you have this red pill philosophy, but it just goes off into these wild areas. Like Andrew Tate is not the same as Kevin Samuels. It's not the same as what people accuse Jordan Peterson of being red pill as well. You have all of these different iterations of red pillism because there's a really, really, really loose goal at play. And a big problem with red pill as well is that it defines itself as whatever isn't blue pill is red pill, which is a big problem. So whatever, if you notice, whatever the left-wingers or blue pill people that the right-wing red pill people don't like, whatever they're not doing is all of a sudden now red pill. And this is a problem. It's called a negative definition. So whatever you aren't, I am. And as a result, this is why you're seeing all these iterations of red pill. Like, we wouldn't have called Andrew Tate red pill 10 years ago. We were less about certain aspects of red pill philosophy now than what was in the past. But what do you think? What do you think about that? I know there was a lot there.
I like the idea to think that whatever isn't blue pill must be red pill. But what the idea of red pill does is it allows a higher grade of awareness for your own personal actions. And whether you like it or not, you were born into this world alone. When you have your family and stuff, and sure, that means something. The tribe means something, but you exit this world alone. And what you do in this world can either A, benefit the society that we live in, or you take the David, what's that David, the Waco guy, David, whatever, that fuck it. He was egotistical, and some would call him red pill because he understood the whole democracy wasn't actually working for the people, it was working for itself. Most things that have an ego don't necessarily need to be one single entity, like a person by itself. It could be a group think. It could be a group of people. It can be a group of conglomerates. Like take government, for example. Most governments you would consider to be the controller, the master, as you would say, to make sure the slaves do what they want. But they're tyrannical to the point where we wouldn't consider them red pill. We consider the individual, like Andrew Tate, we consider him red pill because he's taking his own form. He's taking his own thoughts and he's providing a tunnel to get out of the blue pill thinking.
So quick question. What do you think is wrong with blue pill thinking? Okay.
It's not so much that it's wrong, but the analogy that's created within The Matrix, the movie, is your resources are being pulled while you're given a facade of happiness that isn't real, to the point of having your dopamine pleasures stimulated, so you don't notice what's really going on behind the scenes to make that happen, and who's benefiting from you being in that state. And whether we like it or not, there is some sort of farming happening. If you're talking about data for social media, if you're talking about money for property and landlords and all that stuff, we are being farmed for our resources, for our small amount of energy given to whatever that we're doing, so that others can benefit, that are almost doing their own red pill thing, but they've now, they've set up systems so we don't see what they're actually doing, so they can continue doing the things that they built.
Okay, so I like the idea that there is something wrong with the world in terms of the way it's working currently, and there's a debate to be had about whether it is intentional or whether things just fell into place that way. And I think it is fair to say that things can just fall into place that way. Like, I don't know what billionaire predicted TikTok to be what it was, but if they were, they are some mega genius. I think to a degree things kind of just fell into place, and things can look like they're intentional but not. At the same time, things can be intentional. But I like the idea that there's a problem.
Isn't it a beautiful thing to think that, but almost the technicality behind creating something seeming like it falls into place, but it actually hasn't?
I just think that humans aren't competent enough to do that. Like, for example, let's say we take certain conspiracy theories. I don't want to say them because even saying the words now actually get flagged. But we'll say certain conspiracy theories relating to a plane and two buildings. The work that was put into constructing the theory was amazing. But when you look at it, there is no way that was faked. Unfortunately, government employees are not competent enough to put together certain things. I think in theory, grand plans and the Great Reset and everything can be planned out, but I think that no one, or not many people, are motivated enough to do it or organized enough to do it and then do all of it secretly at the same time. I think rather certain things happen accidentally and keen individuals take advantage of that. And
who's to say that there's no keen individuals standing on top of government, though?
I mean, in theory, there could be, but unfortunately, we have to, as men, we have to operate in the world of evidence. There isn't evidence for it at the moment. But regardless, let's ignore the debate whether it's intentional or whether it's accidental. What I'm interested in is the solution. So, what is the solution to having your attention manufactured or farmed, like your attention farmed? Well, what's the solution? And it seems that red pill philosophy is a solution. What do you think about that?
I agree to a point, but it comes down to the person's own will to accept that. Having one single set of solutions to every problem, it kind of just seems too binary.
Yeah.
Right? But binary thinking gets people into a mode of thinking, is this good for me? Yes or no? On or off? Am I in? Am I out? That's what... And don't get me wrong, all theories are sales. If you're being sold on a theory, you're either saying yes or no to this theory. If it is compelling enough, that theory will sell you because you start to believe the juxtaposition behind the theory. Like, where is this going? Do I understand now that I'm now in this mode? I don't know if you have heard recently that I'm converting to Islam.
You are?
Yes.
Okay. We should get into that. It's interesting.
Yeah, 100%. The reason being is because I've lived my life for the last 20 years as an atheist. I'm probably 23 years. I think I was 7 when I smartened up out of the Catholic Church. I'm like, why am I calling this dude father? What's happening here? Right? There's this one guy, we got to listen to him. He's a bit weird. Most likely, he's doing some nefarious things behind closed doors. I just didn't like the feeling of it. And I think a man without faith is a man lost, because everything comes down to beliefs. And what we believe is what we manifest. And if you believe that there is a lack of energy that has provided us this world, a lack of circumstance or coincidence that has manifested all of this, then you believe in something anyway. And if there's enough evil in the world, doesn't there have to be a yin to the yang?
Yeah. My issue with Red Pill is that I believe what it is doing is it's identifying that a game is being played and then it's picking a side. And I don't think that's the way forward. I think that creating the red pill and blue pill, this binary, is like using this logic. How do people know whether maybe this whole red pill philosophy is a part of the plan? Like even its own logic fails against itself. I think that, like, if you look at what's talked about in the red pill spaces about how women are this way and that way, and identifying the traits of how women are, and then the solutions to it are often the very same in nature which create that problem. Say, for example, you hear certain red pill people talk about how women sleep around, they're very promiscuous and so on. And so the solution is to not be tied down to any woman and to go out and chase a bunch of women, which therefore would create a bunch of promiscuous women. It just seems the solutions rather seem to play into the problem. And they talk about the left-wingers and the Matrix and this and that, and there might be certain elements to it that might be true. I just think a smarter solution would be to not play the game as opposed to picking a side. And what this means is that I just think men should get off, everyone should, but if you're in this space, investing in the real world, your diet, your lifestyle, your position in the world is a better solution than getting bogged down into red pill philosophy on the internet. And this is my issue, is that I agree with certain things that certain influencers are saying, whether they be left-wing influencers, right-wing influencers, Andrew Tate, or whatever. Certain elements of what they're saying is true. But these young men, younger than us, are getting pulled into this world, into this war that isn't even being fought, I don't think. Or if there is
is it that though, or is it noticing, because all that he is doing currently is trying to allow young men to be more the masculine self without the antagonist of having thinking that it's wrong to be that way.
So I think that the problem is the incorrect diagnosis of what it means to be a man. That is the problem, that certain people, let's say in the blue pill side, are telling young men what it means to be masculine. That is a correct problem. The incorrect solution is to fall into this, I don't want to say Andrew Tate is misogynistic because it sounds...
I wouldn't agree with you.
Yeah, it's not accurate, especially because I can't differentiate between what's a joke and what isn't. But I think that what is put forth isn't a viable solution for men. I think strength is the answer. It isn't to play into
that's
this.
what he promotes.
I think
promotes
that
a healthy lifestyle, healthy diet. Everything that's in the real world, therealworld.com, is diet, health, being more of a masculine person, setting goals. Because as I've taken steroids before, and what steroids did for me, above the muscle mass, rather, and the ego that comes along with it, is the heightened nature for progression. Like, you want to get things done, you become goal oriented, you start writing everything down, and when we're constantly on our phone just scrolling and hitting these fucking things, I know fucking
yeah,
there becomes a point in time where your sedentary overlap between estrogen and your masculine traits, your testosterone, kind of fuse. And don't get me wrong, you do need estrogen to make testosterone. But if it doesn't get used in the appropriate way, it tends to overlap, and then you start thinking of yourself more in line with a bitch. And
So I think there's a separation when we talk about people who promote ideas. There are people who will talk about something 90% of the time, and then in 10% of the time, they'll say, well, my position on this is that I am, like, let's say if someone talks about how all you got to do is eat meat 99% of the time, but they say, oh, but vegetables are good too 1% of the time. It can be said that this person is pro-eating vegetables, but is that really the message that's being put across? And this is my issue with Andrew Tate, is that if I go by his statements and what he says he believes to be true, I'm 100% on board with him. But if I go back onto the proportion on which he says it, I'm not with him. Because the issue is that me and you, older men, are able to separate and contextualize what Andrew Tate might say in context. But I don't think young guys are capable of doing that. So I think that here, these statements on the surface of it, I think they're going to get bogged down into becoming men through being capitalists. Not that I'm against capitalism, but like they think that making money is the way to be a man, like getting your money up, getting a bunch of women, chasing the lifestyle of luxury.
well, he personally says himself, if he could go back 10 to 15 years and stay with one woman, he would.
But do you reckon that that message gets put out from his conduct?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Because
Owning
as
a
far as I know,
company of webcam girls, and
basically that gets taken in such a negative light. He was broken up with by that girl, and he was still living with her.
okay.
And she wanted to go down that path anyway. And on that capitalistic mindset, he was like, well, if I'm going to make something from this, I might as well make something from this. And sure, that probably, like we were talking about prior to the podcast, is like suffering and recognition of suffering. If you're suffering and you can find a way to benefit from your suffering, there's going to be a growth factor to you doing something, taking action on that thing. I wouldn't say it's a negative thing to be in your 30s and still sleeping around and all that stuff if you're a male. But as a female goes, and this comes from personal experience, I've been with women in the last 5 years that are 21, 22, 23, and I've been with 31, 32, 33. The women that are 21, they're not worried about whether or not I should settle down or have children. If that is their moral goal, awesome. That's fucking big ups to you. Like, you realized young. But most of these girls that I've seen that are 30 plus, their only value is whether or not I can be provided, or the only value that they see, rather, is, can I be provided for? Can you provide me with children? If that is off the cards because a promiscuous male does not want that, because he is now in his highest rate of value, does that mean that he's doing things against his own moral values? I don't think so. I think it comes down to like a personal thing. And for me, personally, I believe wholeheartedly that the espousal of the things that Andrew Tate has been put forward to the younger community is coming from a place of being 35 now and seeing the path of what it takes to be the most masculine male, being a two-time world champion, a two-division world champion Muay Thai kickboxer, the chess champion at the age of 8. He's always been put into these endeavors. Now, put himself into these endeavors. Now, with legacy, this is the major part of it. This is one thing that I think that gets fucking thrown out the window these days. We tend to think of legacy in 2023 as family. We'll have a family, we'll have this, we'll have that. And our last names mean fuck all anymore. Some people are doing, what do they call them? Hyphen names, where they take their fucking female's name. What is that? What is that? Like, you really think about it. Like, now the woman wants the legacy. Where's the family value that comes with taking my last name, not me taking yours?
Yeah, I think that I've had a redefinition internally about what is important as a man, and I think it's strength above all, and self-sacrifice and so on. My issue is that the problem that the red pill community identify, I also think is true, that men are being emasculated through not only some, being told not to be masculine, but also by engaging in activities that distract them into doing nothing. But the prescription that the red pill community espouses is something that I think is half true, that you should roll into what it means to be masculine. But I think the diagnosis of what it means to be, or the definition of what it means to be masculine doesn't seem to be accurate. I think that it is almost, like we said before, a fetish of being masculine, when I just don't think it's the case. I think that a lot of what it means to be masculine is self-sacrifice. And what self-sacrifice is there to say that you should go out and chase a bunch of women and have no responsibility to a family, and to because it is a sacrifice in a sense to hold down a relationship if you are a successful man. If you are a successful man and you want a legacy, ideally you would want children. You would want a stable family unit to produce quality children and to make those children the best that they can be. How do you do that if you're running around ripping through a bunch of women?
Well, when I can't speak to this because I'm not a hectomillionaire or a billionaire, but the theories that I've heard is when you get to that status level of resource, males usually tend to, even if you take it back, look into primal times, the alpha that would go out and hunt, he would sleep with whoever he wanted to. Why? Because he provided the resources. It's in our nature as men to not be monogamous. It is in our nature to be polyamorous. With women, it's the complete opposite. It's in their nature to hold down the fort at home, be the monogamous family. And when I don't believe that this would... No one man could take down a mammoth by themselves without like a fucking AK-47 or something nowadays. But back then, when they just had spears, taking down a giant animal would be like, oh my God, he's provided resources for weeks and weeks now. We don't have that. We have the monetary value of that. And when it becomes indestructible, what's to say, hey, I can provide you with $500,000 a month, keep a smile on that dial, I'll see you every 3 weeks, but I've got to go do business. And if that requires me to have families elsewhere, well, that's what I'm going to do.
How good can those children be provided for if they have a father with 5 other families with children? I just think, like, in terms of a legacy perspective, I've had a big shift in mindset with this issue, and
that's actually a really good point. Is how would the children receive this when they're growing older?
Yeah, because they need a strong father figure. And what lesson does? How important would you feel if your father has 5 other copies of you? So with other families, and it's the shift that I've had is that just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. I think the problem, like, let's say if you have options in terms of having a bunch of women, why that is good in one sense is that, well, at the very least, you're not in a relationship in which you don't want to be in, but you're only in because of validation. That's not a good thing. We don't want men to ever be in a relationship in which they're in only for the validation of being in one. So as long as that isn't happening, then I think you're good. And I think what people do is think, well, instead of being with one woman that I don't want to be with, I'll be with every woman whenever I want to be with them. And I think it's overkill. I think as long as you are confident in yourself, there is more utility in picking, say, a single partner that you invest in and you have a high quality relationship with. High quality children get produced because you're putting all your attention into them. And in a way, it can actually, in my opinion, men can chase a bunch of women for validation. And it's the hard thing to do, if you have a bunch of options, to pick one and invest in one. That's why I think it's the masculine thing to do, because it's self-sacrifice. Is that other people I take responsibility for, they're going to benefit from me. Like this woman, whoever I pick, is going to benefit from me. My children are going to benefit from me. I have a strong, stable family. I could be off anywhere in the world with other women in other places in the world and so on. But I sacrifice myself to provide strength for the family. That is the function of a man, if you look at it in an evolutionary sense. It's why men are bigger, because they fight the battles. They sacrifice for the vulnerable family. Children are vulnerable. Women are vulnerable, especially when they're pregnant. So that vulnerability needs the masculine protection. And to me, that is more of a better evolutionary reading on the function of a man than men with their testosterone need to be with every woman that they can. That seems less stable to me in terms of forming a society. And this is what I'm saying where I think that there are certain elements to red pill philosophy that are true, but there's a misdiagnosis of what men should be in response to that. I think it is good to be a man, but I think you should be a man that self-sacrifices and becomes the strongest that he can be to bear the weight of the suffering of life. I think that is what is important, and that message I think is being missed with certain advocates of red pill philosophy, I think. What do you think?
That was extremely well said.
Thank you.
I think, yeah, with being in the realworld.com, it kind of does give you the sense of the opportunity to be able to be free, but it does align you with the thinking of one man. And the ego cell on that is so great because you see him in the Bugatti, you see him with all these women, and most of the people that are subscribing to this come from like an incel kind of perspective. Like they can't get women, they can't fund anything, they're relying on somebody for an income source.
The image of the egotistical, say, male in the Bugatti is a symbol of revenge for the impotent. Impotent meaning I can't do any, like young men who have no resources, who have no power, who have nothing to their name, do not succeed in life, and they get angry and vengeful as a result. And so they create almost like a symbol of the opposite of that serves as a function of revenge. So once I get to this position, everybody will regret looking down on me. I think that is what the luxury lifestyle plays into with men. And I think that is a mistake to succumb to that form of pseudo-revenge. Because I felt it in myself. I felt that, like, I just want to glow up. I wouldn't have these problems anymore. People would see me differently. I think it's a misstep into a trap of viewing, ironically, as you said before, yourself as deficient. Because the higher goal you chase in terms of materially what you should be, you necessarily view yourself as less than. And in a way, these red pill philosophies, by creating such a high symbol of what a man should be, create such a low deficit of what men are now. In certain ways. They're doing the same thing as the blue pill.
It's the dopamine chase response.
Yes, they're creating a hyper ideal of what you should chase. Now, in saying that, I do think that you should chase the best you can be. I would just tweak your definition of what the best you could be. It's not you, but people. I would tweak the definition on what the best you can be is. My definition has changed drastically. I don't know what has done it. Honestly, it might be age, it might be some mindset, but to me, what I get jealous of now is men who are stronger than me mentally. Makes me jealous.
Do you play chess?
I do.
Ooh. All right. Sounds good. We playing.
Yeah. But now, to me, character, strength, enduring as much suffering as is dealt to me in moving forward, that is masculinity. I don't care about. To me, flexing fancy cars is weakness.
I understand. And that's a really, really cool response. But flexing fancy cars is also to show dominance.
Yep.
It's a stand-on saying. It's the same thing in like medieval times, or maybe not even medieval. I think it's like 1800s, when there were no automobiles and men used to parade their fanciest horse around Oxford Circle.
Yep. But I think that display of dominance is being used as a
Hard sell.
it is used as a function of sorts to play into men who feel like they're not good enough.
It's marketing.
It's a solution. It's a solution, and I don't think it's a stable solution.
No? Do you think in this current time, this current era of us potentially all being at war, that it plays a role? Yeah, have you seen the new thing about the CBDC, the digital currency?
No, but we'll go off of that. Let's say there's going to be a war in the near future.
It's looking like it.
Yeah, so what are you going to do in a war with the Bugatti? And I don't mean that literally, I mean that metaphorically, in the sense that what good does status and
Well, it's not so much the Bugatti in the war,
but
it's the people that are on your side prior to the war happening that will adhere to the regime that you've been professing. And when time comes for war, I want these people behind me. Because after a war diminishes, the people that are on top, people on top are the ones left with the power. And if you have 500,000, 1 million people behind you, and you stand a chance in a war, well, then it's a lot easier to revolt against the idealisms of of an army. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or even you let these two parties clash, and then they kill each other, and we are standing on top. We have all the resources that we hoarded prior to the war.
I don't think the virtues that are being promoted in red pill space are virtues of strength. I think they're virtues of displays of strength. So I don't think
Isn't that exactly the same thing as what Kim Jong-un is doing with his nuclear launch testing? Isn't that a display of strength?
Yeah. Do you want to be a part of that army?
Well, this is what I'm saying. It's like everything that a power conglomerate will try to do is display their strength. And when it comes down to dictatorships like Russia, North Korea, China, these all have massive amounts of influence and power. But when you've got, when you've got men wearing skirts like LeBron James and John Cena, advocating that most young men, that these are like sports stars that people look up to, and now young men are confused why they're wearing skirts. These were the masculine figures in most of these young people's lives. If that's backed by like China pushing a narrative or Russia pushing a narrative to emasculate the men in that society, how many men do you think are going to jump in the kitchen and make a sandwich while all the men go to war? I think there's probably going to be 50%. So you've got 50% less people going to... Do you know what I mean by that? Women are going to be like, oh, I can't go to war. I'm a female, so I might as well get back in the kitchen. Whatever you need.
Yeah.
But if there's mostly men considering themselves as not men anymore, they're not going to want to go to war. So what does that do? 50% of the army that can fight against these evil rhetorics, we now have 50% less power. And I'm not saying in Australia that we have that kind of position going on, but we are the little brother of America. Little sister at this point. He's considering. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So for me, it always comes back to facing suffering. And my thing is when I look at every philosophy and I evaluate them for their viability as sources of strength to get one through suffering. That's what I've been doing for the last few years. And when I look at the red pill philosophy, I question, can this get men through suffering? The avenue by which it does that is through the weapon of revenge, in that all your problems now are because you are at a low place in society, and once you get to this high place in society, then your problems won't be problems anymore. Now, that might be a crude analysis of red pill philosophy, but I think it's accurate. My issue with that is that
Doesn't revenge provide a goal though?
it's not about the goal, it's the source of the goal. Always. So
Most of the time when I was growing up, like I didn't have my real father wasn't around when I was growing up, so I lacked in like the instruction for legacy. And when I'd go to school, I'd see all these kids with their dads, and I'd be like, "Fuck you, fuck you." But it was the lack of something that inspired that feeling within me, and nobody taught me how to relax on that.
but you did need to relax on it.
But I did need to relax on it.
That's the point.
What I'm saying is most of the endeavors inside of this world, like even the need for monetary gains, for like money, right? It's because of your lack of money that you want money. It's because of the lack of females that you want females. Once you get the females, you don't have that lack anymore.
So the statement you tell yourself is that you are not good enough because you don't have females, right? That statement stays with you even when you have females.
But what if I think of myself as good enough that I can get the females?
Then that is a different source of ambition. That is not revenge. If you build yourself up mentally to the point where you know you are good enough and that, say, women come as a natural result of my worth, and even if they're not there, I do not care. That is a different source of belief that you can get women than I need them because if I don't have them, I'm nothing.
But all forms of ambition are for the attainment of power, as you said.
Yeah, so you want
Right.
a lofty position of some sort. That's what ambition is.
But what do all men want? Beautiful women.
Yeah.
So doesn't that increase your power by having those beautiful women around? Doesn't it increase your power by driving the Bugatti for even just the facade, the perspective of having the resources?
The question is, what do you want at the end? Like, what's the end goal that you want? In my opinion, what the end goal of what people want is to feel good about themselves or to have validation in their own eyes. I think that the acquisition of some material good in the world is not a viable solution to get that thing, because that for 10 different reasons. But that goal will shift. It will constantly be redefined because as soon as you become rich, you find yourself in richer people, but then you get even more richer people. And then you have this deficit that is still there of why you're not good enough. I think a better solution is to validate yourself first. And then I think people don't want to be validated in their own eyes is because it'll take away their ambition to do something in life.
But isn't that just tolerating more shit?
What do you mean?
If you're validating yourself in your current situation, you're tolerating the aspects of your situation that can be that are malleable and can be changed.
Sorry, say that one more time.
So if you're trying to validate yourself, right? And you're not happy within your financial situation, women's situation, as I'm talking to the males here, within the women's situation, isn't it easier to just tolerate where you are and validate where you are right now than going after the goal of attaining those things?
It's more simple. I wouldn't say it's easier because it's very hard to validate yourself because there's a lot of reasons why one might not invalidate themselves in life. But it is simpler to do that, is to validate yourself before you go down a road that promises validation that might not be fruitful.
But it's almost like getting to the goal and detracting from it. So you don't want to be 60 years old wondering why I didn't do that and realizing the implications of why you shouldn't have done it because you attained it in the first place, rather than being 30 years old, going for the goal and then being 60 eventually and being like, that wasn't for me, but now I have the resources to go and validate myself. I don't have to work. I can go do all this stuff.
It's those two fears I talked about at the beginning, the fear of doing nothing, the fear of doing everything. But how many times you hear people who chase a lofty goal in life and think, I wasted my life chasing after this, I missed everything that was in front of me.
Because they didn't succeed.
No, sometimes that they did. You know that song "Hurt" by Johnny Cash. Even though it's not what it's about, the music video iterates that like he chased everything.
I felt the pain today.
Yeah, I hurt myself today.
I hurt myself today.
Yeah. So there is this idea of people chasing incorrect virtues in life. Here's where I come from, is that if I want to tell a guy who is suffering, like, is it a good idea for me to tell him to become the best that he can be? And what that means is to make a bunch of money and get a bunch of validation from women. It could be very temporary. I just don't think it is. I think the source of his, say, negative view of himself is something psychological that he'd need to unhinge. Because here's the problem. How many years does it take to get to that position of power, let's say, of affluence? Many. It doesn't happen overnight. And it's many, many, many years of every morning waking up, seeing about what you want, viewing what you want to be. Because that's the issue, is that whenever you create a goal, you create a deficit, which is where you are now. I am not enough currently. And you create this repeated loop of every single day that he wakes up, he works on something, and when he goes to bed, he is no closer. Well, he is closer, but to him, he's no closer to it than when he started. And this is the issue of dopamine, of chasing, right? Is that you create dissatisfaction in your life, a lot of it. And because I imagine you've done this, where you've been so driven that you neglect your current life now. Your house gets messy. Things in the moment do not matter because you're chasing this future thing. But what happens is you create a very negative mental space because your life is essentially bad. You become a prisoner of your own desires. This has happened to me countless times. This is why I know this. It's because I tend to crank things up to 11. So there's an issue. There's a misdiagnosis in repairing men mentally to chase after things in the world. That's my thing. That's my issue. Is that there has to be a deeper virtue at play, because it's like, well, what do you do when you become a millionaire, whatever, and then your child dies? Like,
yeah.
What's the solution in acquiring wealth?
Let's go back to the child thing. Like, if you're a millionaire and your child dies, couldn't you provide the best medical care rather than just assuming medical care?
You could, and this is a what I would call a virtuous reason for acquiring wealth. This is not based in revenge. This is based in, I want security and health for my family.
But
that is a good reason.
If you acquired that because you were a revenge kind of mindset prior to it, then you had the child, then it got sick. Well, isn't that's almost like an implication on the entirety of the conversation, because having as much resources as possible would then provide a nurturing. And if that was sourced by your own suffering because you were trying to be more than you are.
Yeah, so there's a separation between the source of the goal and the goal itself. So being affluent and rich is good. It is a good thing if you have more, if your tentacles of power stretch further, if you can do more things and you have more resources. That is a good thing, always. There might be some downsides that come along with it, but it's good. Now the question is, well, it depends on the person. Some people, with great power comes great responsibility.
I believe wholeheartedly that the crypto world destroyed a lot of young men because of the lack of attainment of skills, because it was like winning the lottery. But if you can find a way to make it happen and you acquire these skills, so you know that if it all tanks, you can do it again.
That's strength.
That's strength, right?
That's strength.
Yeah.
And that sort of stuff I don't hear in the Red Pill space. I don't hear.
Well, that's what's preached. If you were to, I'm not going to give you my login, but if you were to spend the $49, you would see that all of his facets of information come from a place for empowerment. Sure, label it masculine empowerment, but it's because young men find themselves, and this is playing off the revenge thing and the authority, giving young men the authority to take action to prove themselves as men. Now, I understand the whole, let's rip away the society. What are you without all these things? Where is the suffering? Where's that leading to? What's that coming from? regardless, we're still in this society that's backed by monetary webbing. So isn't it better to proliferate yourself through this rather than just like be sedentary? Go, oh no,
No. I don't think that's there's a comparison there. What I'm comparing is a good source for affluence versus a bad source for affluence. And what you asked is, well, if you use a bad source to get a good thing, doesn't that make it okay?
Yeah.
Which is another way of saying, do the ends justify the means?
Yes.
And I would say it's complicated. I would say no, but there's a good argument for yes, that even if you don't have all your...
Is it a personal thing?
I would say it's a general universal human principle.
Okay.
But it's just very debatable about what that is. Whether I just don't think it's a good strategy to tell men to become successful on the back of a deficiency in themselves.
Okay, so would you say that to the slaves, like in Nietzsche's philosophy? Would you say that it's not beneficial for you to stand as a free man? It's better for you to just succumb to being a slave?
So with those slaves, the issue was that they were redefining morality in their favor. The source of them, say, acquiring power would be freedom out of chastity. The issue with the modern world is that we're creating false senses of chastity for people to break through. And I think that much of what the essence of life that you need is mostly already at our fingertips. I just don't think there's a threshold that we need to meet in terms of making money. Like even if you go around the world, how far does this principle take you? What about people who live in tribes?
How can you go around the world if there's no money to get you there?
Good one. But if we take a look at different paths of, ways of being in the world, it isn't consistent. And what I look for is a universal, consistent principle that everyone, everywhere can follow and then attain the best possible life. There was no financial threshold to Buddha becoming enlightened. He didn't become enlightened through acquiring the 2,500...
But he's portrayed as a fat man.
No, he's skinny. That's the Buddha.
Oh, Buddha.
The Buddha is often...
Sorry, Buddha.
the bold, fat guy is the Buddha.
Right.
But
this is why I need you around.
The Buddha, the Buddha is actually depicted as starving.
Is that
many of the time? Yeah, because the story of the Buddha.
Rub his belly. It's kind of like, don't do that.
Yeah. No, there's nothing
His
wrong.
bloated belly.
So you see him skinny, and so for a long time, the Buddha, ironically enough, was actually rich and powerful, and he was a prince. So he was prophesied that he would become a great spiritual leader or become a great ruler of some sort. And so his father guarded him from all the horrors of the world, didn't let him see old people, starving people, sick people, only ever saw the good parts of life. And then one time he got out and he walked around and saw the people starving, thought it was horrible. And he walked away from the rich and powerful life. He walked away from it because he knew it was not enough. It wasn't the answer. So he walked into asceticism. Asceticism is starving the self. It is the opposite of affluence. It's dopamine fasting taken to an extreme. It's having less and less and less and finding the purity of life. And he didn't find it there either. He thought that this is where Buddhism and Hinduism, or things adjacent to Hinduism, separate, or asceticism rather, separate, is that the Buddha realized that in having nothing also gave you nothing, just as much as having everything gave you nothing. So what he did is he created the principle called the middle way. And there's a story where he was listening to a music player with strings. It was
like an oboe or something.
Like something like that. And when the strings were too loose, he couldn't play it. And when they were too tight, they'd snap. And he realized there was a point of perfection where it created harmony. And that is the same with life. The answer is never the extreme. It's never to have everything. It's never to have nothing. There's a point of abundance and scarcity of which a harmony is produced. And that's what he realizes. Like you don't be too hot, don't be too cold, don't be starving, but don't also be gluttonous. That is the way through life, is that you want to tread the line between too much and too little.
Yeah.
And so
this is like what Ramadan kind of portrays as well.
Many of these principles are connected. Many of them. So that's what he came to, is that great acquisition of material goods. And funny, I think a lot of red pill people should look into Buddhism. So when he sat under the Bodhi tree, he sat under there for 40 days, 40 nights, and then he became enlightened. During those 40 days and 40 nights, the demon, or not Ram, sorry, that should be cut out. That was almost, what was it? It was, I forgot it, Mara. He tempted him with beautiful women. He tempted him with everything, every good that he could, and he had to resist it. And through that, he came to a realization we call the Four Noble Truths, that desire causes suffering.
These are like the stoic truths as well.
Yes, very connected. I noticed that Greek philosophy and Buddhism were, in certain ways, the same. So, where they realize that desires and so on are what play on man's suffering, and that the solution is to impose some virtue ethics on the self. And this is why I think principles, character, all these that's the answer. It is not the acquisition of material goods. It is not this getting more beautiful women. There's just nothing there. Every single culture on earth has identified this. In Islam, in Christianity, everyone has noted this, that vanity is not the answer. So how can I say to, men to follow that path if I know it's not fruitful? Yeah.
Should we leave it at that?
We should.
Dude, thank you so much for coming down.
It's been a pleasure. It's
That was
always great.
fantastic. Awesome, man. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been The Roadshow. Have a fantastic day, weekend. Happy Ishtar to you.
Take me home, I wanna know if you're down, ready to go. Wanna fly away with you, float away, fly